Grey's Anatomy is back with a powerful and emotional episode as Season 22, Episode 9, titled Fortunate Son, puts Richard Webber front and center during one of the most difficult moments of his life. The episode follows Richard as he prepares for surgery to treat his prostate cancer. The promo teases an anxious Catherine by his side, while Bailey offers quiet support before he goes into the operating room. After weeks of inner conflict and fear about how surgery could impact his career, sobriety, and identity as a surgeon, Richard is finally ready to face the unknown, making this episode a major turning point for the character. Meanwhile, the drama shifts to Boston, where Meredith Grey and Nick Marsh are caught off guard by a surprise visit from Nick's sister, and an even bigger shock when she arrives with a baby. Tensions rise quickly as Nick questions whether his sister is sober, placing Meredith awkwardly in the middle of a deeply personal family confrontation. The storyline hints at unresolved trauma and complicated family dynamics that could have lasting consequences. Back at Grey Sloan Memorial, Bailey and Owen take on a high-risk tumor case that tests their teamwork and determination, while Jules continues to navigate emotional confusion both professionally and personally. The episode balances high-stakes medicine with raw emotional moments, staying true to the heart of Grey's Anatomy. Hey, lovely viewers, welcome to our channel Grey's Anatomy Official. What to expect from Grey's Anatomy Season 22 Episode 9, Fortunate Son. Richard prepares for surgery to treat his cancer on Grey's Anatomy Season 22 Episode 9, Fortunate Son. The promo video for the episode shows Catherine feeling anxious as Richard is going into surgery, and Bailey telling him good luck. Meanwhile, in Boston, Meredith and Nick get a surprise visit from Nick's sister. But the even bigger surprise is that she has a baby with her. Nick asks his sister if she's sober, and Meredith appears caught in the middle of a tense conversation. Here's everything you need to know about this episode, including the air date, cast, promo, and how to watch. Grey's Anatomy Season 22 Episode 9 details. Title, Fortunate Son. Air date, Thursday, January 22, 2026. Time, 10 of 9 C. Network, ABC. Main cast, Chandra Wilson, Kevin McKidd, Kim Raver, James Pickens Jr., Chris Carmack, Camilla Luddington, Anthony Hill, Jason George, Alexis Floyd, Adelaide Kane, Harry Shum Jr., Nico Taro, Trevor Jackson, and Ellen Pompeo. Notable returns, Ellen Pompeo, Scott Speedman, and Debbie Allen. Guest stars, Britt Morgan. When does Grey's Anatomy return? All about the next Season 22 episode. Grey's Anatomy, Season 22 might have another heartbreaking twist when it comes back. Grey's Anatomy Season 22 premiered in October 2025. The medical drama aired its most recent episode in November 2025 before going on a holiday break. The ABC show returns with new Season 22 episodes in January 2026. The staff of Grey Sloan Memorial deserved a break this holiday season. In October 2025, Grey's Anatomy returned for Season 22, picking up in the aftermath of the devastating explosion that rocked the hospital in the Season 21 finale. The blast injured several and led to the shocking death of a doctor. Following the catastrophic event, Meredith Grey, Ellen Pompeo, and other members of Grey Sloan Memorial began rebuilding while trying to stay hopeful, a theme that will continue throughout the installment. One thing that we're looking at across the season is a theme of hope, showrunner Meg Marinas told Shondaland. It clearly is dashed at the beginning of our season with our destroyed hospital and what's happened to some of our characters. And so, our characters really need to find hope. Grey's Anatomy Season 22 has featured the series' signature mix of medical drama and emotional relationships. After the most recent episode aired in November 2025, the show is making a highly anticipated comeback. So, when does Grey's Anatomy return? Here's everything to know about the next Season 22 episode. Is Grey's Anatomy on tonight? Yes, Grey's Anatomy is on tonight, January 8th. Season 22 premiered on October 9, 2025, and the latest episode aired on November 13, 2025. The medical drama recently reached a historic milestone. The second episode of Season 22 was the series' 450th episode, a moment creator Shonda Rhimes spoke about on Today in October 2025. I cannot believe that's what's happening. That we've gone so long that now we're the longest-running medical show in history, she said. When does Grey's Anatomy return in 2026? Grey's Anatomy returns with its mid-season premiere on January 8th. Season 22, Episode 7 is titled Skyfall. A 30-second promo for the upcoming debut shows Jo, Camilla Luddington, under anesthesia in an operating room. Additional crew members then rush in as a baby cries in the background, and alarms on medical equipment begin to sound. Shortly after, viewers see chest compressions being performed on Jo as Link, Chris Carmack, prays in a church surrounded by candles. In the final seconds, Bailey, Chandra Wilson, tears up while standing next to Richard, James Pickens Jr. Grey's Anatomy Season 22 Episode 9 Recap: Webber fights against a second opinion. With Webber dealing with his health issues, there is a lot of focus on him and his internal dilemma during Grey's Anatomy Season 22 Episode 9. Meanwhile, Jules deals with her feelings, and Bailey and Owen work together on a tumor patient. Caution: this post contains spoilers from Grey's Anatomy Season 22 Episode 9. It all starts with everyone listening to Teddy's interview that was mentioned in the previous episode, and this opens the conversation between Catherine and Webber. Naturally, Catherine wants Webber to get a second opinion from a doctor Webber doesn't pay the paycheck of, and that leads to Catherine sharing she already called a doctor. Meanwhile, we learn that Jo is making a full recovery. She focuses on the downsides of her daughters, but Link tries to keep her spirits up. Things take a turn when she realizes that Winston and her favorite nurse, the OBGYN's favorite nurse, have been out a few times. Jules deals with a role-playing patient on Grey's Anatomy Season 22 Episode 9. For Jules, everything starts with a call to the A woman comes in with someone who seems to be her doctor, or maybe her husband who happens to be her doctor. However, it turns out that the two just like to role-play, and the husband isn't a doctor. The leg pain definitely is real. Meanwhile, Bailey goes up to the tumor board to see if she can get help for treatment for a tumor patient. The tumor is benign, but it's a tricky situation and the patient has coded on the table twice while at Seattle Press. The tumor board isn't interested in the risk, except for Owen. He doesn't have any idea on how to deal with it, but he's ready to tackle the situation. Maybe he's encouraged by the success that Teddy has had. Bailey and Owen need a miracle. Webber and Catherine meet with Laura, and she quickly gets into the details of the cancer. The good news is that Webber has caught it early, and she thinks the best treatment is to remove the prostate. However, Webber isn't interested in this, focusing on the downsides of the surgery, such as stroke, and it's understandable. To be fair, Catherine railroaded him into this, and she knows what it's like to want to deal with cancer on your own. However, I will say pot meet kettle. Bailey goes to her tumor patient, Lydia, with the mixed news. While the tumor board says no, Owen makes it clear that he wants to help. It's time for them to co-work on a plan, and Lydia wants to do it. Her wife may not be completely on board with this, but Lydia convinces her to give it a try. Jo heads to the NICU to see her babies, where she meets with another mom of a NICU baby. Despite knowing about the post-birth hormone drop, she wasn't expecting to feel things the way she is doing. However, this NICU mom doesn't let her focus on that part of things. She wants to know all about the crash C-section. As for Catherine, she goes to talk to Webber, accusing him of only wanting a male doctor. Finally, he brings up that while he didn't agree with her healthcare decisions in the past, he accepted them. Now she needs to do the same for him. Then there's Bailey, Owen, Winston, Simone, and Lucas dealing with the tumor. They all run through options, looking at the different downsides to the options. It's time to find a miracle, and it's clear that the podcast with Teddy has spurred this on for Owen. In the Jules overhears a conversation between Link and Winston about Nurse Iris, and pulls a face, but she doesn't have time to react to it or think about her feelings. Her role-playing couple needs help. The wife Stevie T has turned into something much more serious with the leg now black. Owen gets an idea on Grey's Anatomy. While in the break room, Laura apologizes to Webber, realizing that he never agreed to meet with her in the first place. She does seem to figure out how to work through to his good side, inviting him to help consult on a patient. You just know how that's going to turn out. As Lucas gets another text message from Katie, Simone immediately judges. She doesn't think the conversation is right for a doctor and patient to have, but it's clear that she's projecting, dealing with the fact that she's sleeping with an intern, the intern that caused problems for Simone and Lucas. Bailey figures out why Owen is helping on the case, but she's interrupted from talking with him by Lucas and Simone walking in with bad news. However, all the bad news, Owen starts to get some ideas. What about using ECMO? Owen decides it's worth going to see Winston to see if it could work. It certainly seems like it could be possible, and while it's not been done before, Lydia is excited to hear about it. Sure, there are some downsides, and there could be a problem, but there is a chance that it could work, and Lydia wants to take the risk. Meanwhile, Teddy gets to the bottom of the DVT patient, and it leads to the reveal that Jules and Blue will be doing the surgery. It's time for Teddy to just observe. As Joe and the new mom bond, things take a turn when the new mom collapses. Fortunately, there are plenty of doctors around, but what will this do to Joe's heart? Laura opens up to Weber. It turns out the NICU mom is seizing, and Joe is sure that it could be eclampsia. Joe gets Link to go up to keep an eye on the new mom, and she'll be able to stay on top of it that way. Of course, not everyone agrees with Joe's diagnosis, but she pushes for the treatment for eclampsia, and nobody can argue with Joe. Meanwhile, Owen and the team start the operation. It's clear that Bailey isn't that happy about the situation, but there isn't much choice here. Everyone else is on board. I still think Laura turned to Weber to get him to listen to her, but it does lead to her opening up about being a doctor with MS. She gets a lot of others to do most of the surgeries, and she works mostly with robotics because of her medical issues. It's clear that something is getting through to Weber that medical conditions don't need to be the end of a career. Elsewhere in the hospital, Jules and Blue practice in the skills lab. As Jules talks about how she's fed up with hospital life, it looks like Blue takes it easy on her and walks out of the skills lab. Jules can have this win. The act ends with a problem in the OR. As the patient's BP drops, Owen and Winston run through all the options that it could be. While there's no sign of bleeding, it's possible that it's something bigger with the surgery. They need to get to the bottom of it, or there is nothing that they can do. Naturally, Bailey is scared about that. Can the doctors save a patient? As Lydia is stabilized, the doctors need to get back on the same page. Owen hands out the orders, but he does turn back to Bailey to make sure she's okay with it all. At this point, they've gone too far to stop. Jules also gets praise from Teddy in her OR. Elsewhere, Laura and Weber discuss the possibility of removing Weber's cancer. It finally comes to what Weber is really worried about. Out of all the side effects, there is a risk of the need of opioids, and that breaks Weber's sobriety. This isn't about fear of the cancer or of actual side effects, it's about what the treatment of those side effects can bring. Back in Bailey's OR, her patient starts to code again. She's able to find where the bleed seems to be coming from, but can they work fast enough to stop it? They manage to pull the tumor out, and now it's time to close her. As for Joe, she gets up to the OBGYN floor, where she checks in on her friend. However, she runs into a roadblock, as she's not the woman's doctor. Iris can't give any of that information, and while a rational Joe would understand that and agree, postpartum Joe doesn't. All she wants to do is find out how her friend is. Weber makes a final decision. Things with the surgery seem to have worked out. Obviously, with Grey's Anatomy, we know not to count out chickens until they hatch, but Lydia makes it out of surgery. As much as Bailey didn't like the idea for a while, she does appreciate how much of a great thing they did. Owen now has some ideas for the residents, getting them out on an ambulance ride-along or something similar. Bailey wants to see a proposal. As we start to wrap up the episode, we learn the role-playing couple are all good, and Lucas and Simone seem to be in a good place with him telling her that while he values Simone's opinion, leave the relationship ones out. At the bar, Winston comes across Jules. The two get talking, but Iris interrupts them. It's clear from Winston that he realizes a little of what's happened, but will that change things between him and Jules? Blue sees that Jules is struggling with the Winston/Iris relationship and makes it clear that Iris is just a stop sign rather than a roadblock. Maybe Jules just needs to pretend to be someone else while hooking up with someone at the bar. Joe gets a chance to open up to Link as she runs through all of the things that she couldn't do. She felt like she was getting her identity again as a doctor, but then someone else took over when it mattered. Weber also takes the time to open up to Catherine, sharing that he is worried about not being able to do surgeries again. However, the idea of death is even worse, so he's going to go through with the surgery. Tonight on ABC, their hit drama Grey's Anatomy returns with an all-new Thursday, January 15, 2026, Season 22 Episode 8, and we have your Grey's Anatomy recap below. In tonight's Grey's Anatomy Season 22 Episode 8 called Heavy on Me, as per the ABC synopsis, Bailey and Owen join forces to save a tumor patient, while Richard faces an internal battle. Meanwhile, Jules struggles with her feelings for Winston. We are so excited for another season of Grey's Anatomy, so make sure to bookmark this spot and come back from 10 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Time for our Grey's Anatomy recap. While you wait for the recap, make sure to check out all our Grey's Anatomy recaps, spoilers, news and more, right here. Tonight's Grey's Anatomy recap begins now. Refresh page often to get the most current updates. In tonight's Grey's Anatomy episode, Teddy and Winston did a podcast about Nora's surgery. It was groundbreaking surgery. They might have saved thousands of lives by proving it could be done. It gave Owen hope. It did the same for Bailey. Bailey has a patient whose benign tumor could kill her simply because of its placement. It displaces the lungs as well as the heart. It was resistant to chemotherapy. She experienced 2 surgeries that had to be aborted at the last minute because she kept flatlining on the table. Bailey didn't care about all of that because she knew that a successful surgery could give this patient back some quality of life. Bailey wanted to push ahead with surgery. She went to the idea table amongst doctors. She asked if anyone could stand with her in doing the surgery, and most of them turned it down fast. They didn't want to risk a possible lawsuit. That's how they saw London. London was merely a lawsuit. She wasn't a person anymore to them. They didn't want to risk getting sued just to save her. Bailey was still pushing ahead, and Owen must have been a little too moved from earlier podcast because he agreed to do the surgery. There was just one problem. Neither he nor Bailey had an actual plan to tackle the many complications that would come with surgery. They were just willing to risk it because London doesn't have any other choice. They roped in Winston to see if he could help them. They had the interns doing background research into similar tumors. They wanted to know everything that's worked and not everything that failed. Lucas didn't mind working with Simone. Then again, he didn't know that she now officially sleeping with an intern. Simone was sleeping with Wes. They hooked up the first time and it stopped Simone getting back together with Lucas. Now, they were hooking up because Simone felt she didn't have enough problems. Her relationship with Lucas nearly destroyed her career. She's now getting involved in another workplace romance, and this time with someone junior to her. Simone knew she shouldn't. She also knew she shouldn't be jealous of Lucas's patient. The one that was messaging him all the time and asking for movie recommendations. Katie has stage 4 cancer. She was in a clinical trial that might not work out. She didn't have much. Let her have this friendship. Lucas thought he was just being supportive. It was Simone that claimed he could be leading her on by not defining boundaries. Like she could talk with what she has with Wes. Does Wes know it was only sex, or does he think they could be something more? It's the same problem that Quan had last week with the fellow that he's sleeping. They work together, and seeing each other every day might lead someone to believe they were dating. Those two decided that they were merely sleeping together. Simone's case might be something more, if not something with the potential of being different. Simone doesn't know. Lucas doesn't know about it. She therefore doesn't have a right to be jealous of getting friendly with another woman. The two didn't find a solution with similar tumors because there were no similar tumors. None that had the same markers as London's tumor. It's okay, though, because Owen finally came up with an idea. Owen realized they could use ECMO. The ECMO would be pumping the blood through her veins like her heart normally would. It would stabilize her in surgery long enough for them to get to the tumor. They agreed to it. They talked London about it. She agreed because she didn't want dying slowly. Her wife was apprehensive. She still agreed to it, seeing it as it was the only solution. London's surgery was tricky. She nearly coded on the table and they stopped it. They were able to successfully remove her tumor. Jo in the meantime got to spend with her girls in the NICU. She met another mom with a baby in there. They became mom friends. Unfortunately, this friend started to seize. She was suffering from preeclampsia. Jo recognized the signs. She talked the woman's doctor through what needed to be done. She tried to check her file later on and her favorite nurse refused to do it because Jo wasn't the doctor listed on the file and so Jo lost it. She began yelling. Her husband had to roll her wheelchair away. Jo has been through a lot and it was all catching up to her now. Jo has been quite emotional since the twins' birth. She even cried when she found out Iris has been grabbing drinks with Winston because Iris was her favorite nurse. It's why she was going to apologize to her after today. She also considered changing hospitals. She was embarrassed she cried so much and in front of so many people. Mind you, the Iris thing had Jules avoiding Winston until she could no longer do so. She helped a couple that needed help and that gave her the push she needed to be adventurous. Richard also agreed to seek other options for his prostate cancer. His wife wanted him to. He kept refusing to do earlier because he didn't want to take opioids for the possible pain and that's just a risk he has to take if he wants to survive this thing. Your official Grey's Anatomy recap, Season 22, Episode 8 AST Week's episode of Grey's Anatomy ended by assuring us all that Jo Wilson was going to be okay. We love a dramatic eye-opening from a hospital bed, but this week, she's still dealing with a complicated postpartum situation. She's not the only one facing some complex life moments, though. Heavy on me sees Richard make a major decision about his prostate cancer treatment plan. Bailey and Owen team up to remove a 35-pound tumor from a woman's abdomen, and Jules ponders if she is too aloof. I guess that last thing isn't as dramatic as cancer treatment and giant tumors, but it is important nonetheless. Let's dig into this week's episode. Richard makes his choice. There's honestly nothing like one of our Grey Sloane docs emotionally declaring that they are a surgeon with verve and feeling, reminding us that's who they are in their bones. This is exactly what Richard Webber does by the end of Heavy on Me. Richard has been through so much, hasn't he? Remember when he had a brain tumor? Or when he got cobalt poisoning from a hip replacement? Or that time Meredith told him he's the reason her mom tried to kill herself and ruined their lives? So much. And now our Chief of Chiefs is left angsting over how he should treat his prostate cancer. Well, I guess it's more technically correct to say he's angsting over how Catherine thinks he should treat his prostate cancer. Richard's already made his decision with his doctor. They're going to wait and watch. He doesn't want any kind of risky surgery. What does Catherine want? Well, she's flown renowned urologist and urologic oncology superstar Dr. Laura Kaplan in from Boston to tell Richard to have the risky surgery. It is Catherine's way. Richard's initial meeting with Dr. Kaplan and Catherine ends with him storming out. Kaplan thinks he should do a radical prostatectomy and have the entire thing removed. Richard knows the risks of that surgery, and blood clots, stroke, and injury to the rectum are just 3 in a very long list. But when he runs into Kaplan doing work in the attending's lounge while she's waiting for Catherine's plane to take her back to Boston, Richard isn't angry with her. Both of them understand how Catherine works. Kaplan apologizes for not realizing Richard wasn't the one requesting a second opinion, and she also wonders if he could consult on a patient she's working on. It seems the two become fast friends. Eventually, Kaplan opens up to Richard about having multiple sclerosis. Getting that initial MS diagnosis was terrifying. She worried she wouldn't be able to operate anymore, and it was soul-crushing. But instead, she came to see her MS as not a career ender but as a career pivot. Her symptoms, like muscle pain and leg weakness, would make it nearly impossible for her to stand in or operate, so she simply found a different way to operate. Now, she mainly performs robotic procedures. She can sit, and she doesn't need to be able to hold a scalpel. I still get to do what I love, even if it is in a different way, she tells him. Her words cut to Richard's core. When he sees Kaplan leaving later, he tells her that he rejected her opinion out of fear. If he suffers complications from a radical prostatectomy, especially a rare but very scary-sounding urosymphyseal fistula, he too might never get to operate again. Kaplan reminds him that she can treat complications, but if the cancer progresses, Richard runs out of options. And that seals the deal. He finds Catherine to tell her he doesn't want to live in fear, and all this time, it was his fear that was making medical decisions for him. He's a surgeon, and he'd be devastated to lose that part of him, but whatever happens, people can adapt. He can adapt. He's getting the surgery. A little inspiration goes a long way. See? Sometimes a person simply needs a little push to do something scary but important. Sometimes a person simply needs a little inspiration. Inspiration, as it happens, is exactly what Owen is missing these days. After listening to Teddy and Winston talk about the innovative aorta surgery they pulled off with Nora on podcasts and the like, Owen is a tiny bit jealous. Teddy deserves all the press and accolades, of course, and he repeatedly wants to make sure everyone knows he's totally fine with all this, but more and more he's feeling like his own work is stalling. He's got a case of the bloss, okay? So, when Bailey and Simone present a patient with a 35-pound benign tumor compressing all the organs in her abdomen, Owen is the only doctor who backs them up. He thinks Bailey can remove this tumor, and he wants to help. It doesn't take long for Bailey to realize Owen's motivations for joining her team might not be totally altruistic, but they are mostly altruistic, and that's good enough. She needs as many brains on this case as possible. The patient, London, has attempted surgery before, but because of the pressure on her heart, she's wound up crashing on the table before doctors can remove even part of the tumor. It's Owen who brings up putting London on ECMO so that there would be no shot of her heart failing in surgery. Good for him. It's unconventional, and London's wife, Charlie, is hesitant, but London doesn't particularly feel like waiting around to suffocate to death. She wants to live. She wants the surgery. Bailey and Owen are joined by Winston, Simone, and Lucas in the OR, and while there is more than one moment when things look bleak for London, the team work flawlessly together and eventually remove that behemoth of a tumor. I hope Owen puts it in a jug and takes it home. London is saved, Bailey is relieved, and Owen is finally getting his medical mojo back. In fact, by the end of the episode, he asks Bailey what she would think about building some type of EMS training or ambulance ride-alongs for the residents so they can learn more about thinking on their feet and get additional trauma training. Bailey tells him to write up a proposal for her. Owen Hunt is inspired again. Meet Jules. Sally. Definitely Sally. Like Owen, Jules Millen is in a bit of a slump. Hers, though, is not of the medical variety but rather stems from her non-existent social life. Jules has always been slow to let others in, a trait that sometimes has consequences like the one we saw her face last week when she dashed over to Joe's to tell Winston that she's interested in him, only to find him having drinks with Nurse Iris. It seems everyone around her is busy with other people they've let into their lives, and for Jules, well, the cheese stands alone. Lucas may not be dating Katie yet, but the two are texting regularly, and he does seem to perk up every time he hears from her. Naturally, this bugs Simone, who admonishes him for an inappropriate relationship with a patient, which is hilarious because she is currently and enthusiastically boinking an intern. Eventually, Simone realizes what Lucas is up to is none of her business, and the two manage to have a friendly conversation about getting Katie movie recs while she's laid up. Are these two healing? I will forever be holding out hope that they once again find their way to an on-call room, but for now, this is nice. Quan too seems to have mended whatever he may have messed up last week with Mohunty. Those two and their booty calls are going strong. Good for him. But Quan's not so swept up in his new situationship that he doesn't notice things are off with Jules. Remember when those two were in love with each other? It seems Quan is still a softie when it comes to Jules. Not only does he give up the race for a thrombectomy so that Jules has something to look forward to, but later he notices Jules staring longingly at Winston and realizes what her real problem is. It's Quan who tells her that Nurse Iris is merely a stop sign, not a roadblock, when it comes to her obvious feelings for Winston. He doesn't want her to give up. I do love when Quan is this sweet, but it is also deeply unsettling. Watching all her friends and her big-time crush enjoy their time with other people has Jules feeling down, and it certainly doesn't help when she once again gets saddled with a patient who comes in with some sort of relationship bent to their backstory. She always has to deal with the people who are incredibly in love. It's the universe just repeatedly hitting her over the head. When Jules meets Janet and her husband, Hal, who enjoy role-playing as doctor and patient, until Janet arrived at the hospital with a DVT and a need for an emergency thrombectomy. She's mostly confused about why they would need to pretend to be other people to be interested in the person they supposedly love. Jules is very judgy. But wouldn't you know it? At the end of a long day and another interaction with Winston in which they both clearly want to smash their faces into each other until Iris shows up, no shade, she seems nice, Jules is approached by a cute guy at Joe's, and instead of pushing him away, she invites him to sit down and introduces herself as Sally. Maybe role-playing to liven things up isn't so bad after all. On making mom friends. How about we end this recap with a quick check-in on our constantly beleaguered family of 6, the Lincoln Wilsons. Or the Wilson Lincolns. Have we landed on one of those yet? I am thrilled to tell you that Joe and Link have named their 2 new little ones, welcome to the world, Peyton and Hattie. Joe is on the mend, but it's been only 3 days since Winston had to adjust her pump lest she go into cardiac arrest, so while her heart is getting stronger, she's still being observed. The good news is she does get to spend time with her babies up in the NICU. The bad news is postpartum hormones are a bitch. Joe is crying all over the place, as is her right. After the things this woman has been through in this month alone, I'd be catatonic. Everything is turning Joe into a puddle, even a nice NICU mom named Gina, who refers to her as Peyton and Hattie's mom for the first time. The 2 women chat, Joe gives Gina some postpartum advice as a doctor, and Gina is thrilled to have her first real mom friend. It's very cute. And then Gina falls over and begins having a seizure on the NICU floor. Not so cute. Joe can't move out of her chair, but she flies into OB mode anyway. She can tell Gina is suffering from eclampsia, and if she can't follow her to the OB floor, she wants Link to be her proxy. From speakerphone, Joe demands that the intern put in charge of Gina's care administer magnesium to stop the symptoms. When he hesitates at her diagnosis of eclampsia, boy, does she ream that kid out. A glorious sight to see. Gina's going to be okay, thanks to Joe, who, yes, is still crying. She even takes Nurse Iris' head off when Iris refuses to violate HIPAA, and wishing she felt more like herself. She already misses not being able to be a real doctor at the moment. Sure, it's only temporary, and Joe will be back, but wow, is her maternity leave going to be a real doozy? Your official A Grey's Anatomy recap, Season 22, Episode 5. As our omnipotent overlord Meredith Grey informs us in this week's voiceover on Grey's Anatomy, there's always one patient who can change everything for a doctor, someone who leaves them with a change in perspective or with whom they have a powerful emotional connection. And based on Simone's, Quan's, and Joe's experiences in Sometimes I Feel Like a Motherless Child, Mare is proved correct. Isn't she always? Simone's taking a ride on a real roller coaster of emotions. What a way to end a shift, huh? Simone is almost ready to wrap things up and hand off her patients to Lucas, but when Lucas is late, Aunt Amelia is in Boston, apparently, so there's no one to kick him out the door. Weber assigns Simone to do the workup on recently transferred patient Regina Evans, who is suffering from congestive heart failure, renal failure, and hospital-acquired pneumonia. She is annoyed at first by her ex's tardiness, but that changes when Simone notices that one of Regina's personal photos she has set up around the room is of Simone's mother, Denise. Simone is obviously taken aback. Not only is she meeting someone who knew her mother better than almost anyone, but Regina, also pretty shocked to be face-to-face with her best friend's daughter, starts telling her stories of their crazy, rebellious teenage years, such as sneaking pot into a concert by A Tribe Called Quest and staying all night, only to receive some serious lectures from Mama Joyce, Simone's granny. Simone's overwhelmed with conflicting emotions. Her father always described her mother as a serious, straight-A student, and now she's learning that wasn't the full story. It's as if she's getting to know her mother for the first time. As is tradition at Grey Sloan Memorial, the situation with Regina gets much more complicated. She has an aneurysm. It's not emergent, they schedule a surgery to remove it the next day, but it is concerning. Still, the wait gives Simone and Regina more time to chat, and before long, Simone confesses that she and her sister aren't close because Ebony blames her for their mother's death. Simone blames herself too. She made her mother a statistic, she tells Regina. Regina rejects all of this. Of course, it wasn't Simone's fault, but she understands the weight of that guilt. She's been carrying it around too. Toward the end of Denise's pregnancy, Regina got a dream offer to study at a prestigious culinary institute in Paris. She was going to wait until after Denise gave birth, but Denise told her to go. If she had been there, maybe she would have pushed harder for the doctors to pay attention to what was happening. She begs Simone to let her carry that burden of guilt and to go live her life to the fullest. It's what her mother would have wanted. Just as they are having this emotional breakthrough, Regina's oxygen drops, she codes, and as hard as Simone and Lucas fight to bring her back, there is nothing they can do. Regina dies, and Simone is left devastated. If we're looking for any sort of silver lining to Simone's wild and emotional few hours, it could be that seeing how hurt Simone is after losing Regina and how overwhelmed she is after so many of her mommy issues are stirred up, Lucas remembers that despite the breakup of their relationship, he still cares about her. He takes some time off from his brood-a-thon to offer her a ride home. She declines, but the fact that he offers, that he has softened his steely post-breakup feelings, is a sign that maybe these two can find a way to get along again. Kwan's doing house calls now. If there's one thing we know that will stand the test of time with this generation's batch of young Grey's Anatomy residents, it is that Benson Kwan will forever and always have a soft spot for single moms. We mean that in an empathetic, typically medical-related way, or maybe not. You never know. That is what happens when, during a shift at the clinic, he realizes that a patient, Mercedes Hernandez, has been a no-show at multiple appointments, and this time she hasn't bothered to even call and reschedule. Mercedes, who has PCOS and diabetes, has also missed her prescription refill, and without keeping her blood sugar in check, she's at risk for a whole lot of complications. Something about it just doesn't sit right with Kwan, and as the clinic closes down for the night, he decides to make a little house call and brings Jules, who really just needed a ride home after a long day, along for the ride. Kwan has a spidey sense that lets him know when single moms are in trouble. When he and Jules arrive at Mercedes' house, she can't even get up from her couch, and her mother and young son Javi are scared. When Kwan sees that not only does she need an insulin shot but that she also has a nasty diabetic infection on her foot that has made one of her toes necrotic to the point that it falls off her foot when touched, he wants to get her to the hospital before she loses her whole leg. Mercedes refuses. She's heard there are ICE agents waiting around the hospital, she's had a cousin taken off the street, and she has no idea where they've put him. Her status was revoked just a few months ago, and now she's terrified that she'll disappear too. She is so scared, she won't leave her house even if it means putting her life at risk. It is infuriating. Kwan calls for backup, and Bailey arrives with a fully stocked ambulance so that they can treat Mercedes right outside of her house. Bailey and Kwan are able to save Mercedes' foot and make her promise to have someone pick up her meds from now on. But just because there's a happy ending medically speaking, it doesn't mean Bailey isn't upset. She's angry that this is the current state of things, in which people are going to die because they are living in fear that they'll be ripped away from their families. It's cruel, she says. It's inhumane. She's also not just a little bit annoyed that Kwan and Jules went rogue with a patient. She's proud of them for going above and beyond but reminds them this is a fireable offense, if she wanted it to be. For now, it'll just be a warning with a big ol' thank you attached. Bailey, always with the salty and the sweet. Hey, on the less life-threatening end of things, Jules winds up spending a lot of time with Mercedes' young son Javi and his velociraptors, Benito and Josh. Javi, like many kids in his situation, is scared every day that his mom might be taken away from him. His velociraptors give him comfort, and it's a comfort he wants to pass on to Jules to thank her for staying with him through the scary parts, and so he gives her Josh on her way out. Jules, in turn, offers Josh to Winston when she runs into him at the hospital and finds him stressed about presenting Nora Young's surgery to a room full of people. He, of course, turns her down since he's an adult and all, but still, he appreciates the thought. And we know this because that man can't keep his eyes off Jules as she walks away. Josh the Velociraptor knows what's up, and so do we. Joe and Amy and Kevin. Joe Wilson finds herself dealing with two stubborn people, who both, as it turns out, have very good reasons for digging into their opinions. Link, still recovering from his near-death experience, is out of sorts because his mother is pushing him to get the twins baptized once they're born. Link isn't religious, and he doesn't want to baptize his kids into a religion he doesn't believe in. Scout's not baptized either. Joe doesn't mind the idea of getting the kids baptized, and in a surprise to everyone including Link and all of us in the audience, Joe is kind of religious. She's never once hinted at this before, but she seems adamant when she tells Link about a nearby Korean church she would go to for meals as a teenager and how she was jealous of the community people formed there. She tells him how she prayed when he was hurt, and it brought her comfort. It's all well and good but does feel a little out of nowhere. Meanwhile, Link, just as confused as the rest of us, tells his wife about a church group who would visit him and the other kids in the cancer ward when he was young and make sure they knew God was watching over them. Even as a kid, Link questioned how this could be true if children were dying. And he certainly doesn't see God in what's happening in the world now with the planet burning and people starving. He hated it when that group came around. He also reminds Joe that there are other ways you can find your community. Alas, these two will have to table this discussion. Joe is dealing with a high-maintenance patient. Amy is in labor, and she refuses to change her birth plan, a vaginal birth, with no medication, even when Joe discovers the baby is breech. Joe can attempt to turn the baby before delivery by performing an external cephalic version, but it's not guaranteed to work, and it's also painful without meds. Much like that baby Joe is trying to turn, Amy will not budge on her plan. There comes a point where there is nothing else Joe can do for Amy if she won't let her be her doctor and do what she thinks is best. Amy calls out for her husband, Kevin, only to reveal that Kevin died 3 months ago. Surely, Amy must feel like her life is out of her control, so being so strict about her birth plan, controlling this situation, makes a lot of sense. Amy tells Joe about her husband, and Joe reminds her that this baby is a part of him too. The reminder works, and Amy hands the reins over to her doctor. Joe delivers a healthy baby girl. Joe's time with Amy was a reminder that sometimes in life things are simply out of your control, and as she and Link head home, she is surprised to find that her water has broken. Stand by, folks, Joe-Link twins are imminent. Thanks for watching this videos. Please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up.